Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. Warm welcome to our very final Catalyst workshop, where we're going to be sharing the outcomes of the 3 previous workshops, which some of you may have participated, and also the findings from our recent employer survey. My name is Sanna Rimpiläinen. I'm a Research and Skills Manager at the Digital Health and Care Innovation Center, and I'm here today with my colleagues Jennifer Thomas and Kieran Morrison to guide you through this session. I would also like to thank the organizers of the DigiFest who have arranged for us to have this session as part of the conference. So the previous 3 workshops have been run on Teams and using a Miro board, which have afforded a bit more interactive interaction with the audience. So today, instead, because we are on this Hopin platform and it is made primarily for presenting, we're going to be using Mentimeter here on the side, and Kieran will explain to you now how that's going to work.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the session. So if you look in the session chat, you will see that there is an address to go to www.menti.com, and then you enter in a code to join the Mentimeter session that we're in. It should bring you to a screen that looks similar to the one that's on screen right now. But if you do this using a mobile device, it'll allow you to more smoothly take part in the session. And once you're in, I'd ask you to just press on the little heart icon, and then we can see how many people have joined into the Menti session. So that was just me there now. And I'll give it a few minutes to make sure that everyone's on board, and then we can move on to the first section to just show you how Mentimeter works. I'll just give people a few more minutes just because they might be looking for a device or setting it up on their browsers. And I just see that we just had someone join the session there now. So again, I'll just explain. If you go to www.menti.com and use the code 4104925 to join the Mentimeter session, we can get going.
The Mentimeter details are in the chat. So if you missed the code, the access code, it's written down in the chat of this session.
And on screen as well at the top.
Oh yes, of course.
So I think at the moment we have roughly 16 people in the session. So if we can just get 16 people to press the heart button once they're on, then we can move on to the next question. Really, some people might be struggling to access it, so maybe we'll go with 13 and call that a good number. So very close. Okay, so I think people are getting onto it now. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the next section of Menti just to show you how it will work, and then we'll move back to Sanna, who'll run through the majority of the workshop before we move on to the final Menti session. So if you could just tell us what sector you work in, just very roughly, we can kind of see the spread of people that we have with us today.
Useful for us to gauge because people couldn't directly sign up to this session, so we wouldn't know who is in the audience. So this will help us kind of guide what we say or what we pay attention to in our presentations.
we have more people answering the question, and I think we have people liking it, so that means people are on board, which is good. And then, so that's a fairly expectant spread, but it's quite a good one. We have representatives from the majority of the sectors, so that's good. And then if we move on to the next question, which is just again, did you take part in the DHI's previous Catalyst workshops? Because it's looking like this is pretty 50-50, which is good. It's all, well, there's more that haven't, so the information won't be as brand new, or sorry, won't be as repetitive as those who've been in the workshops before. So that's good news for us. So I think for now, if I'll leave this up on mine so people can still come on and log in and answer the question that's on screen. And I'll move back to Sanna so she can get on with the rest of the presentation. But we'll be using Menti towards the end to get some feedback from you guys and some answer some questions we feel we need to get from the group. So thank you very much, and I'll just hand back over to you, Sanna.
Sanna, we can't hear you.
Thank you for this. So yeah, so welcome again to all those participants who arrived after the initial welcome slide. So yes, our colleagues from Skills Development Scotland who've been supporting us in organising these sessions and also the research in leading up to these sessions, they couldn't be here today, and they have sent us this slide in support of today's work. So Millie Shukla, who's the Skills and Planning Sector Development Manager, has sent this slide and her regards to us today. So from SDS's point of view, these workshops have been an opportunity to collaborate and co-design solutions to the issues affecting digital health and care workforce at the moment. The workshops from 1 to 3 have focused on, so the first one on talent attraction, raising awareness of opportunities and key skills required by digital health and care industry. The second workshop was about influencing academic and vocational pathways, prioritizing industry needs and addressing upskilling and reskilling issues. And the final one, the third one, was about creating new educational pathways for roles in demand. And today's workshop builds on the above, and we were going to present the outcomes and a call to action, which we will be presenting at the end of today. And so this is just a quick run through of the previous workshops. But before we move on to looking at the outcomes of these workshops, we have some new and exciting insights coming in from our employer survey, which only was completed last week or the week before. My colleague Jennifer is going to talk us through these developments, so I'll let her take the floor now. I think she's probably queued up her slides already.
Thanks, Sanna. I'm going to switch off my camera. Welcome everyone to this session. I'm going to switch my camera off so that there's no technical glitches, just to avoid any interference. And I'll start going through my slides. So just to provide some background context, and hopefully this won't be too repetitive to people who've been to previous workshops, the digital health and care sector is one of the fastest growing economic sectors in the world. And this is something that's become even more evident with the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the single biggest factor restricting the growth of the sector, both globally and in Scotland, is a lack of the suitably skilled workforce feeding into it. As you might imagine, there's a huge array of occupations within the sector, from the more technical side of things, so jobs like maybe software developers and engineers, infrastructure designers, cybersecurity architects, moving into the more translational roles which are maybe the roles which could be thought of as being the interface between humans and technology. So that's where they translate data and information and knowledge between humans and technology. So that may be things like knowledge engineers, health data analysts, and product owners. And then it goes right through into the more, I suppose, soft skills or face-to-face digital health and care roles like advisors and educators, consultants and managers, and people who work in a face-to-face capacity. So Skills Development Scotland asked us to carry out some research into the sector and its skills and capability needs back in 2018. And the main purpose of the study was to highlight the issues underlying the lack of clear career pathways in the sector and to offer advice for organisations who are involved in planning the education and training provision for the sector. Our Spotlight report was produced as a result of this, and you can see the cover of it on this the slide in front of you now. We're not going to go into it in too much depth today, but if you're interested in finding out more about it or looking at the accompanying fact sheets, you can either use this QR code on screen or you can access the report through our website, or we're happy to point you in the right direction if you want to stick something in chat and we can send it to you. So the study focused on the 6 occupational categories, which you can see on the screen now, which were deemed to be the most in most urgent need of skilled staff. As part of the study, 26 people who worked in the digital health and care sector in these 6 categories were interviewed, and they were questioned in depth about the skills and capabilities required to perform their jobs. And this led to the development of a digital health and care skills heat map, which you can see now on this slide here. It's a bit too detailed to go into when it's sort of so small, but essentially it's like a matrix with the job roles that I mentioned in the previous slide listed in the left-hand column and a range of skills along the top, which we asked people to rank in terms of how crucial or not relevant to the job they were. And essentially the colours represent a ranking system. So those skills are marked in dark red or red were decided to be the most crucial or important skills. So this was things like communication skills, information literacy and organisational skills, this type of thing. Yellow skills were those that would require more of a working knowledge. Blue were a bit more of a basic understanding, and the grey boxes are the skills that were deemed to be the least relevant to those roles. And the next slide identifies these in a bit more detail. So as you can see, there are sort of 3 categories of skills. Most digital health and care occupational categories share the bulk of skills requirements with varying intensity, but the core skills are those skills that are shared by all categories, and they're deemed as the important or the crucial skills, with a few exceptions, of course. The technical, or also known as domain-specific skills, have a bit more variety depending on the type of occupation you're looking at. And then the specialist skills really differentiate the various specialist orientations of the occupational categories. So given that then in the study, the Spotlight study, we only really spoke to 26 people, we decided it would be really helpful to reach out to the sector and get a broader response. Hopefully, we were hoping this would either validate the findings in the heat map or perhaps recalibrate them completely. So we decided the best way to do this would be to design an online survey just to reach out to as many people as possible. It was originally going to go live in March, but the decision was made to postpone it as the workload of the sector was overwhelmed at the time with COVID-19. So it was relaunched in October and it was kept live throughout October and November. And we invited employers from across the sector to complete it. So we used our own contacts internally, and we also raised awareness of the work through the DHI newsletter and through social media. And the next few slides will look at the responses we received and discuss preliminary findings. So who responded to the survey? Well, we had a healthy response. We had 48 people from a range of sectors and representing a good variety of digital health and care activities. Most people were employed in the public sector, with nearly a quarter working in a healthcare capacity, and around 3/4 were employed either in a supervisory or managerial capacity, which is a good representation because when we sent out the survey, we weren't sure who was going to complete it, and you don't have a great deal of control over who responds, but we were looking for people who were in positions of management or supervisory, so they could have a good overview of the sector. We asked people to describe the types of activities that their organisation carries out, and there was a real mix from digital innovation and product development to education and research, right through to the delivery of health and social care services in a range of settings. And we asked the participants to identify the main end users or customers of their digital products and services. And that covered both organisational users, such as NHS boards, local authorities, health and social care partnerships, as well as individuals. So to summarise the key survey findings, well, first of all, it's difficult to gauge how representative the sample that we got was without knowing exactly what proportion of employers have responded. It's difficult, in fact, to define the number of employers in the digital health and care sector overall. So we're not sure how representative this sample actually is. And the original survey, as I said, only had 26 people, which is quite a limited number. And the survey had 48. So these additional people were able to identify job roles that we hadn't included in the initial findings, which was useful. And these included more of the soft type job roles or face-to-face jobs, such as care-related jobs, leadership roles, and project management roles. Another finding, though, was that completing an online survey can lead to some confusion, maybe over definitions and personal interpretation. So, for instance, when we ask people to identify a specific digital health and care job role that best reflects the type of work that they do or that their organisation are involved in, most people identified face-to-face roles. But when we look more closely at the types of jobs that they were classifying as face-to-face, there were some inconsistencies. So these were actually jobs that we would class as translational or more technical. There was also some confusion about skills. And again, it comes down to personal interpretation. So for instance, one person identified a student nurse as a job role that reflects the type of work that their organisation is involved in. And obviously, clearly it's a job that requires an in-depth understanding of the health and care domain, but that person had ranked their domain specialism skills as being basic, which clearly isn't the case. So it's maybe just a case of not understanding the question that we've put to them, or, so I think overall, I think we would have got a better and perhaps more accurate response had we spoken to people face-to-face rather than done this online. But all of these points can be linked to the emergent nature of the digital health and care sector, but also the fact that further ongoing research is probably advisable. And it certainly points to the fact that the more people who we speak to and the more responses we get, the better picture we get and develop of the sector as a whole. We've started, though, to look at a bit more closely at the face-to-face job categories, simply because there was so few of them to start with in their original work, and we had quite a few responses in the survey. And we compared these to the original heat map to see if there was any correlation. So at a glance, which is all we can do in this slide, you can see that there are marked differences in the way that respondents have classified these skills, even within the same job role types. So under this box, which says face-to-face job roles, even if you look at the care-related jobs, which is the first few lines going across the way, even these are quite different, which does point to the fact that individuals are ranking them differently. So here what we've done is we've reordered the heat map to reflect those skills identified as being important or crucial for these jobs, which is the red or the dark red. And it's striking actually how many skills are similar for both project managers and leadership roles, which whilst the care-related jobs obviously look slightly different. But this points to the difference in skills requirements from the more technical end of the face-to-face digital health and care roles, and at the softer end, which is the care-related jobs, which are more associated, I suppose, with the digitalising of health and care services. And when we look at the face-to-face jobs collectively and analyse the top 10 skills, we can see which are the most crucial. So in this slide, the dark red ones, the three top skills identified in all of the face-to-face job roles. So as you can see, collaboration skills, communication skills, and end user engagement skills are all considered to be most crucial to these jobs. And it's interesting to note that some of the technical skills that we classed in the original heat map could be classed as core skills in face-to-face jobs. So this is something that we're going to look at in a bit more depth. We also asked people about the current and future skills and capabilities gaps in their organisations. And people identified skills gaps at all levels. So entry level, which is classed as less than 5 years experience, experienced, and at managerial levels. And these skill gaps ranged in terms of technical ability from your basic digital literacy, which is a particular issue in light of increased homeworking. I'm sure we've all come across people who struggle to even carry out video calls online. But also people there's a gap in specialist skills, things like data analysis, coding, modelling, and data manipulation. And this graph shows that the main reason people felt there were gaps was because of competition from staff from other industry sectors. And it's long been acknowledged that there is a lot of competition between sectors for qualified digital technology staff. In the case of jobs like data analysts, the health and care sector struggles to compete in terms of salaries with the likes of the fintech sector. So this is something that we're already aware of. So in terms of where we go from here, well, firstly, as I've said, we've only carried out initial analysis of the findings. So we need to really have a more detailed look at the results, and we'll do this over the coming weeks. We've also recently launched a second online survey, which looks specifically at the recruitment needs of digital health and care organisations and the training and development opportunities that they might provide. We're also asking them about the education and skill system for the digital health and care sector. And maybe what we'll do is try and put a link in the survey, link to the survey in the chat, or we could send it out later on if anyone's interested, get in touch, because it'd be great if people could respond to the survey or pass on to relevant people in their organisations that could potentially complete these questions. So at this point, it'd be good to see if anyone's got any questions. I don't know if anyone has put anything in the chat, or if anyone would like to ask about either about the survey or about any of the points that I've made.
So I will be keeping an eye on the chat for the next minute. If nothing appears, we can move on to the next part of this. Thank you very much, Jennifer. That was really interesting.
Thanks, Sanna.
So people, does anyone have any questions? There's no raising hand option here, so we can only use the chat at this stage. You can also enter the questions into chat if you need a little bit of time to think, and Jennifer can come back and respond to you on chat.
Happy to do so.
Okay, so it doesn't look like there's any kind of chat activity happening there right now. So let's move on to the outcomes of this Catalyst workshop. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Can you see it? No, I stopped sharing mine just then. Is this visible? Okay, so I'll turn off my camera as well because it is a little distracting. So yes, so we're going to be talking about this, the outcomes from these 3 Catalyst workshops that we ran in November. We had a total of 35 unique participants from across 26 organizations who took part in these workshops in total. Some people participated in more than one of these workshops, and generally, this is a really impressive group of key stakeholders that have contributed to the thinking and co-creation of the solutions to these strategic questions that we put forward to these workshop participants. And effectively, we've crowdsourced a lot of useful insights and advice from everyone who participated. Given that there were a lot of people who didn't participate in any of these workshops, don't worry, we'll be going through the strategic questions by way of reminder as we also talk about what the outcomes from these workshops were. And we couldn't find, there's one logo missing from this lot. We couldn't find one consultancy company's logo, unfortunately, but everybody else is or should be there. So the first Catalyst workshop, it was about raising awareness of the digital health and care sector and the skills and capabilities that would be required within it. So for the study, as Jennifer explained, we interviewed 26 professionals who were working across the aforementioned 6 occupational categories. We mapped their education and career histories to date and interviewed them about the skills and capabilities that were required to perform their jobs well. Well, some of these categories obviously have clearly defined educational opportunities already, such as software developers or cybersecurity architects. The study didn't identify any clear paths, even for those roles, leading directly into careers in digital health and care. In fact, there was only just one person among all of these 26 participants who had moved into digital health and care sector straight from graduation, and he was in his 2nd year of career. So it kind of all highlights the emergent nature of this sector. Instead, the study identified that the underlying reason for the lack of existing educational opportunities and career pathways in digital health and care is the general lack of awareness that these kind of job opportunities exist. So while the sector is crying out loud for skilled staff to come and work in it, people who could work in that, they don't necessarily know that these opportunities are available. So this workshop, we presented 3 questions, 2 of them related. So across the 3 workshops, we had the same exit question for all of them, and I will talk about at the end of all of these things. But the 2 main questions in the first workshop was how to raise awareness of the digital health and care sector, and how to raise awareness of skills and capabilities required in that sector among parents, careers advisors, teachers, general public, etc. And I'm going to present the findings or the outcomes of this workshop in just together here, because basically the answers to both questions boiled down to this list of bullet points. So first of all, we were encouraged to develop a national approach to the problem. So this would align with the Once for Scotland policy. We should start engagement early. So raising awareness already at primary and secondary schools that digital health and care sector exists, and that there are different types of job roles available in that. What was raised as a key point was we should influence influencers and educate influencers. This means parents and teachers and careers advisors who will be influencing the types of subjects that the children pick when they are selecting their chosen subjects, for example, at secondary school level, and when they finally are thinking of different paths to take into further education. We should consult and engage with industry partners to inform these kind of approaches. We should develop educational and campaign resources with partners to appeal to a range of audiences. So we were suggested that, for example, the younger generation might not find information about this sector on websites or newsletters, whatever. We should approach Snapchat or TikTok and Instagram, all of these kind of medium. And finally, it was suggested that it would be useful to expand the range of types of qualifications available for digital health and care and incentivize training. So these were the outcomes from the first workshop. The second workshop focused on how to bring together the digital health and care industry and employers with education providers in order to influence curriculum and ensure a better fit between graduate skills and capabilities and the needs of the industry. The workshop also looked at how to create upskilling and reskilling opportunities for existing staff and for people who might be moving into digital health and care from other areas of economy. This is even more pertinent question just now, as COVID has left so many people unemployed who are looking for new working opportunities, but also because many people who work in health and care roles might be looking to switch jobs. So the first part of the workshop looked at, asked what steps should be taken to facilitate or enable strategic collaboration between the industry and employers in the sector and the education skills system. And from these conversations, the feeling was that both sides are finding it hard to identify who they should be speaking to in order to start this engagement, and that there seems to be mutual need to better understand what the other party actually needs and can offer, and where these mutual interests might lie. In terms of steps to take to influence curriculum, included clearer communication about the digital health and care sector and its needs, what kind of skills are required in the sector exactly, and that there should be an increased number of internships, apprenticeships, and industry placements available as part of further and higher education degrees to create a link between the industry and education system, and to introduce graduates to the sector at an earlier stage. And we'll be coming back to this point at the call to action. The second part of this workshop looked at then the CPD opportunities for upskilling and reskilling existing staff and for attracting new talent to the sector. We asked people to think about short-term and longer-term opportunities and steps, and identify barriers. So both short-term and long-term engagement with industry was highlighted as essential, and shorter term it would be to identify immediate skills gaps and needs, and longer term the emergent skills gaps and needs. For both, it was also suggested that it would be really useful to map out and the kind of existing available resources and find out what could be reused and modified for CPD purposes. So, for example, when there are a number of master's courses in digital health and care related subjects available in Scotland, are there any individual modules from those master's courses that could be used for just upskilling, reskilling purposes, standalone ones, or are there, for example, possibilities of combining different modules for different strands of education that could create like a pick and mix new type of pathway to take. What was also emphasized was the need to create multiple and flexible types of learning opportunities. So currently the education provision for digital health seems to primarily consist of master's level study, but not everybody has the opportunity or the luxury to take a whole year or 2 years part-time off their work to actually take this kind of training. So there's kind of more flexibility and more kind of diverse provision in digital health and care training is required. Longer term, it was also mentioned that there needs to be a paradigm shift in education. So there needs to be more support for interdisciplinary and collaborative course planning and delivery at educational institutions. We should encourage more girls and women and minority groups into technical and digital roles. And then, even if this isn't really anything to do with curriculum per se, it came up time and again, and it is to do with how to attract talent into the sector, and it is a big issue with pay. So salaries aren't competitive in digital health and care, unfortunately, at the moment. And one thing that was pointed out was that the NHS currently still lumps digital technology staff together with IT staff, and that is preventing higher salaries to be paid for people in those roles. And I believe that the NHS is currently already doing something about this, but that was the case when we were carrying out the study 2 years ago. In terms of barriers, so obviously the lack of sufficient funding and resource to deliver these short-term suggestions is the foremost barrier in the first section. Funding is an issue longer term as well, but it was pointed out that the established inflexible degree structures at further and higher education are a barrier, and that introducing changes to curriculum currently takes such a long time, I think 3 to 4 years before a set curriculum can change. So there is a need for more agile curriculum development. Traditional course approach to teaching digital health and care was seen as a barrier as well. So again, if it is very discipline focused when you need to have something that is more interdisciplinary, that is very difficult to kind of realize. And again, professionals and educators' time and capacity was raised as a barrier, or lack of time and capacity was raised as a barrier, for example, at medical schools. So, so again, we'll come back to this at the call for action. Then the third Catalyst workshop, we looked at creating new educational pathways. And obviously, when a workshop is only 2 hours long and you have lots of participants, it is not kind of realistic to expect to have a educational pathway available at the end of it, but there are ideas of how to proceed. So the 8 occupational categories, so we talked about 6 occupational categories, but as the data came in, we ended up dividing the cybersecurity category into further 3 subsections. So there's 5 plus 3, which means 8 occupational categories in the Spotlight report. So they can be divided into roles that are relatively domain agnostic, but require high levels of technical ability. And then to roles that require an in-depth understanding of the health and care domain, but only an operational knowledge of the technical aspects relating to that job. So the findings from this report show that the 8 occupational categories in the study share a vast majority of skills and capabilities required to perform these jobs. And this offers scope for developing shared training opportunities to enable more flexible movement of people between these roles in the sector. So in this workshop, the first question focused on the more technical roles listed here on the slide. So what steps should be taken to start creating shared education provision for knowledge engineers, software developers, health data analysts, cybersecurity architects, and cybersecurity administrators in this case? And I need to remind you that this is not an exhaustive list of types of skills available in digital health and care, but as Jennifer earlier pointed out, these were deemed to be roles that are in most urgent need of skilled staff in digital health and care in Scotland at the moment. So what steps should be taken to start creating a shared education provision? So we asked people to think about opportunities, steps, and barriers, again, short-term to long-term. We have pointed out that we should look at what other similar sectors have done in this situation. Are there any examples that we could follow? Pardon me. Again, tapping into existing resources. So do not reinvent the wheel, but see what you can reuse and modify to kind of take up on this. Fostering a pipeline of talent for the sector among the younger generation, supporting career changes to transition into digital health and care sector. And that might be one way of getting people in, for example, those roles that are more senior generally. This was an important point, is engaging an accreditation and awarding body to help with the process of creating these shared learning and opportunities and pathways. And in fact, that might be the core thing that should be done in terms of these, maybe even the starting point of this kind of engagement. Again, flexible degree structures were highlighted, and the importance of recognizing prior learning. Steps here in the middle, so researching the other sectors, identifying gaps to address, designing joint pathways, then tapping into these resources, creating learning materials where required, etc. You can read it on here on the slide. But there is an interesting barrier that I want to highlight here, which was discussed at length at the third workshop, is the organizational differences between the integrated health and social care sectors. So when the health and care sectors were integrated in Scotland by law in 2015, since then we've been learning to say health and care, digital health and care. But we were pointed out in this workshop that we should really be talking about digital health and digital care rather than digital health and care when we are thinking about the workforce development questions, because there are such vast organizational differences between how the healthcare staff works and the social care staff works and how they are trained. and what the nature of their jobs. So this was something that we should probably take a note of and think about when we are thinking about these educational routes and pathways. The second part of this workshop looked at how to create early career opportunities for translational occupations. So these are, as Jennifer was telling earlier, these are roles which are situated at the end phase between humans and technology, and which we see as translating data, information, and knowledge between these. Among these occupational categories, these are product owners, implementation facilitators, knowledge engineers, and health data analysts. And recognizing these types of new translational roles would be crucial in supporting the development and implementation of digital solutions as part of the digital transformation that the health and care sector or system is currently going through. I don't know if it's maybe useful to just briefly explain what these different categories are in case they aren't familiar. So product owners, they work in agile technology development projects. They translate users' needs into technical terms for software developers and translate the capabilities and limitations of software into lay terms for users to understand. Implementation facilitators work with health and care health and care staff and organizational processes to translate digital innovations into routine use in health and care services. And obviously they can work in any other type of context where innovations are being introduced. Knowledge engineers, which might be the least well-known category out of these, they work with artificial intelligence, and they effectively translate human language and behavior and explicit and tacit knowledge into algorithms for use by AI tools and products that support decision makers in health and care. And health data analysts, whose job is going through this kind of most drastic transformation at the moment with the automation and digitization of data flows. So they translate numerical data into information, intelligence, and insights to support decision making in health and care settings. So here we asked people to just brainstorm ideas for how to create early career opportunities for translational occupations, because a lot of these are very sophisticated roles which require both a very well-versed knowledge of technology, but also require kind of high emotional intelligence, if you like, so a good understanding, insight into how people behave, why they behave the way they behave, etc. So it is really hard to think that somebody could become a knowledge engineer straight from a course from university even. Most of the people we spoke had a postgraduate degree at least and several years of work experience behind them. So how could we get early career opportunities for these types of roles? So we pointed out that it might not be necessarily new roles, but refocused roles. It would be useful to enable and encourage lateral transition for people between careers and translating existing skills into new jobs. So bringing people into these kind of translational roles that way. Create accredited funded online learning opportunities, but also graduate apprenticeships and on-the-job learning routes. And again, it was pointed out that we should reach out to younger generations to raise awareness of career opportunities. Then we had this exit question for all workshop participants. So when the workshop finished, we asked people just to leave ideas on the way out of the door, so to speak, for this question. So how could we improve the attractiveness of the sector, digital health and care sector, by focusing on its unique selling points? So a lot of the time, the issues that we hear is that digital health and care sector has difficulties in competing with staff, competing for staff with other sectors, because it can't compete with them in pay. So what are the other attractive points about this sector? Well, again, it was suggested we would need to drive a national marketing campaign and showcase real people working in digital health and care to inspire others to follow their example. It was emphasized that we should be clear about the humanistic and value-based aspects of a career in digital health and care, and the fact that you're able to make a real difference to people's lives and their well-being, even if you don't work in a sort of medical role or health and care role. And there was also, pardon me, suggested that we should highlight job stability, the possibility for growth, that this sector is just growing and the opportunities are expanding with that, and that there is such versatility in the careers in digital health and care. So we come to this call to action. So we have brought together a lot of people to share ideas and insights and contribute jointly to how to take this forward. So we have now decided to propose 3 things. The first of all, we're proposing the creation of a digital health and care talent pipeline advisory group. Secondly, we would like to set up an industry-led curriculum group to facilitate industry education, collaboration and engagement. And we're envisaging that these two groups would work in tandem, the industry curriculum group informing the work of the advisory group, and that the outcome of this work is a funding proposal for a national campaign co-designed with industry and delivered with partners to raise awareness of the digital health and care sector and skills starting from early years through to adult workforce and general public, to create CPD opportunities for educators at all levels of education, so from primary schools through to universities, develop educational and campaign resources with partners aimed at multiple audiences, disseminated using multiple channels and media, help develop flexible upskilling and reskilling opportunities for career changers, engage with SQA and other awarding bodies for more agile curriculum development, creation of new education pathways and for better recognition of prior learning in the sector, and engage with further and higher education for more agile course provision and educational pathways for digital health and care careers. So these are the questions, or this is our kind of call to action. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because next we're going to ask your opinion on what do you think of this of these suggestions. So I'll let Kieran come into force here. Just a moment.
Okay, so we have a lot more people in the call now than we did when we previously ran through Mentimeter. So I'll just give everyone an opportunity to follow the access the address at the top of the screen and use the code associated with us on their mobile device so they can get onto Menti. Our previous question is still up, so if they want to test it out, they can see it. I noticed that some people have added to the question already, which is great. And Andrea has also very helpfully pinned all the access info at the top of the chat if you need to get in. And I'll just give everyone a minute to get back onto Menti before we go. And if anyone's new to it, make sure they just yes or no so we can see whether we have them in on the platform or not.
Here, Amanda, please wait for the presenter to show them.
So anyone who's already answered the question that's on screen at the moment will see a screen that says, please wait for the presenter to show the next slide. For those who are just joining, they'll be able to see what is being shown on screen just now. I can see one person's answered the question. So I'll just wait 30 more seconds and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay, that's great. That's another person joined in. And you can join Mentimeter on other devices, so you don't lose what's on the screen as well. I've been using it on my phone, which is probably the easiest way of using it. Okay, so we'll move on to the next section. So as Sanna alluded to, we're asking for you guys just to, first of all, to gauge your support for this call to action. So please click on your answer and submit it, and we'll start to see what the group thinks about the call to action. And it's okay not to answer in the affirmative, just to let you know, and no one can see your answer either. But we expect quite a landslide in one direction. Okay, that's great. We have 37 or 36 people in the call, so if we can get the numbers even close to 30 on the answers, that would be brilliant.
A little bit frustrating not to be able to have a conversation with the participants, given that this is a kind of workshop type of situation. It's also possible to use Mentimeter on your browser, so you have to just open a different browser on your computer if you can't use a mobile device.
And if you're new to the chat, Jennifer has just put it in the bottom of the chat, but also Andrea's pinned it at the top of the chat for you to just enter in those details. If we can, I will start a little countdown. We'll give everyone 30 more seconds to get their answer, and then we'll move on. Once we've moved on, you're only able to answer. So if you're having trouble getting on, just let us know in the chat. And unfortunately, you will not be able to answer once we've moved on. So there is a bit of a pressure to get your answer in.
Kieran, I'm slightly disappointed that you didn't use a Christmas emojis for this question.
Well, there's only so many Christmas emojis you can use. Okay, so that's a good response. It'd be interesting, not to call them out, but I put our email address in the as research@DHI Scotland in the chat. So for our one possibly, it would be great if you could contact us there, just to kind of get a dialogue going on what your concerns might be. So we can move on to the next section now, Sanna, unless you want to say anything.
Let's just.
Okay, no worries. So the next section is sort of just a short answer to ask if there's any considerations you think we've overlooked in the presentation that was just given. You have 250 characters to do this, so you can put multiple things if you like. But once you've submitted this, you cannot resubmit, so be careful.
I think we might give people 5 minutes to There's a question by Julie Armstrong asking, has any work been carried out mapping SQA units to carrier heat map? No, there hasn't as yet. It might be a useful thing to be doing.
I'll get the ball.
Although we have carried out a review of all the different courses available in Scotland that might have anything to do with digital health and care. That's a couple of years ago now, kind of as a basis to the original report, and I think there might be a time to do some kind of refresh review of those, because the provision, from what we can tell from administering the digital health and care masters funding in Scotland, we know that these courses are on the rise, and also from our engagement with the college sector, they are increasing the availability of digital health and care type of training at colleges. There's a question from Alison Marcusy as well. Might want to consider regional pilots to test range of approaches. That's a really good point. Yeah, and regional. There's quite a lot of regional work on the way at the moment in sort of digital skills and digital health generally. So that would be a very good approach to take.
So we're getting some answers in on this. We don't have to go through them all, but we keep a record of it and put it into our thinking and our work going forward. So any answers you can get would be great.
Yeah. So there's lack of capacity in terms of what, I wonder. So there is do you think lack of capacity in participating in delivering this work? These move up out of the way before.
So they're on a repeat, so everything.
Does it repeat throughout? Okay.
Yes.
Current digital infrastructure that are not fit for purpose to support innovative digital solutions. Yeah, that is a kind of problem generally, that we are kind of trying to anticipate things that are coming with this digital health and care training and training provision. But things are changing. They are changing fast, and they can change very fast, and that's the reason why we need to think about the skills preparedness or workforce preparedness questions at this moment. Nice to see service design mentioned. Yes, great to consider. I didn't have time to read that. Yes, opportunities and routes to get into digital health and care beyond education. Yes, so as sort of someone who might be in the working life, so we were trying to kind of consider that through transition from one sector to another. So that's why we talked about CPD and importance of that.
Okay, so we've now closed the answering, so we can move on to the next section. But there's
Okay.
all great feedback.
Yeah, we will take a note of all of these questions.
And if anyone has anything that they wanted to include but didn't have the time, just use the chat function and hop in to get those across. Okay. So in the next stage, we want to know which organizations do you think should be involved in this proposed digital health and care talent pipeline working group?
Or advisory group.
Advisory group, sorry. And you can put in 3 options. If your organization that you want to suggest has an acronym, I would request that you use the acronym just to save on space. And this this is merely for us to kind of understand the thinking of the sector and where you all think, it would be appropriate for us to start gauging interest and recruiting people into this advisory group.
To this Mentimeter, because it allows this word cloud to build up and also highlights those that have been mentioned more. I don't know whether it is reading, is it taking case into account at all? Probably not. any more responses coming in. At 3 o'clock, about half an hour, so we're in no rush as such, although we can finish earlier as well.
Put a minute countdown on it, just so there's an end point and people get their answers in. But it's a good spread so far, and a lot of what groups that we have worked with in the process of our skills work are appearing.
Any of the yellow ones, I can't actually discern what they say.
Yeah, so we have Public Health Scotland, NDS, HSC Skills Gateway, Manufacturing Skills Academy, Third Sector, and colleges.
Interesting spread of organisations, isn't it? It's good to see. Again, I think that's maybe what we were thinking too in terms of some of the key.
It also says whoever is willing and people you want to reach. It's going to be interesting to see this in more detail once we.
Well, the whoever and willing point is quite an important one. It's participation and participant interaction is important.
Yes, absolutely.
In most research processes, but this is quite a vital thing to remember as we work through the groups. So that voting is closed. But once again, if you have any further suggestions for organisations, that just put them in the chat, and we can move on to the next question. So this is for the industry education panel, and we realise some of the answers may overlap in this, but again, it's interesting to gauge just what you as stakeholders in the sector think, and just because one organisation's in one group doesn't mean that they cannot sit on the other one as well.
I must say I can't see what is on this slide. It's slightly pixelated at my end, so can you read, Kieran, if you can see better?
There's some answers in green that I think are disappearing. Unfortunately, I have set this to what works for me as a colourblind individual. I can see it all very clearly.
Wow.
With the green are Scotland IS, larger digital health corporates, college sector, specialists in digital roles, NSD, and the data lab. I am unfamiliar with the NSD acronym, so if someone could place that in the chat, it would be much appreciated.
Yeah, NSD, I can't really, national something, maybe. Yeah, NSD, whoever put that down would be really good, unless it was meant to say NAS.
And again, apologies for anyone who's struggling with the colours. This is more of a designer error, on my part for going with what works for me.
A timer for this?
Yes, I can set it. I can start a timer. So we just put a minute on it so people get them. So someone has placed Glasgow in as a suggestion, and it would be great if it provide some context to that in the chat.
I wonder if it's university, because it's Glasgow and it's Strathclyde.
or is it the council,
Yeah.
or is it? Yes, and it's important to remember someone's placed in UHI out in colleges. Maybe we haven't alluded to too much, but it's important to make sure that this is an all Scotland approach
yeah,
in every way.
Especially if it is so it's aimed to be a national campaign. So then we will.
Okay, so that's our opening close. So thank you for answering this. And now the next question is, we don't expect a massive rush to the forefront, but this is just if you would like to volunteer, or do you have suggestions for a lead figure for the education panel? So if you yourself don't want to put your name but your organization, then just the answer can be DHI would like to volunteer as a lead figure in the panel, sort of answer. Or if not, then you can leave it blank, or just a name of an individual or organization as a suggestion as well. But make sure you name the organization.
Yeah, someone has said yes.
So unfortunately, I jumped the gun on I should have made sure that I explained that beforehand. But again, if you want to get put your organization name in the chat, it would be much appreciated.
Or even if it isn't your own organization, I don't know if there are any industry people listening to this, but if anyone else can think of a kind of good figurehead from some organization as by way of suggestions, that would be really useful to get some kind of ideas for which organizations to approach. There's 2 colleges, multidisciplinary lead. Yes, that's actually a very good point. We do have at least one company that have already said they're interested in joining this panel from the industry side, and we've got endorsement from a number of other kind of panels and organizations for this proposal generally. So hopefully we will get representatives lined up. There's Young Scott, that's a good one. Innovation centers. But so innovation centers is a group. It'd be good to approach the industry representatives who are the people who will employ industry representatives, so companies and health and care employers who will be employing these future digital health and care professionals, to be the sort of the other partner of this panel. So if there are any people from those sectors listening, that'd be really useful to get some suggestions from the industry side.
We have just 30 seconds left to get any other suggestions in.
But it's great to have the other volunteers and participants from the education side. And yeah, it's a good point about the multidisciplinary part of this. 14 seconds to go.
Okay, so that's the voting closed, but must sound like a broken record now. If you have any suggestions and didn't have the time to get it in, please either contact us at research@dhi-scotland.com or place them in the chat.
So Jennifer's just passed the.
Yeah.
Julie is asking, have we done any work using KSFs to map the DHI heat map? So I don't know what KSF stands for. The Scottish Youth Parliament, I think, was one suggestion maybe for the industry education panel. Yeah. Knowledge skills framework. Right. No, I don't think. No, we haven't done any. Actually, I don't know if Nez has done any Nez has done any mapping. So Nez has developed some future digital health and care career profiles, and we started mapping these across, but haven't completed that, but haven't looked at the actual skills, knowledge skills framework. And that's a good idea as well. Yeah, Christy's just replied to this question as well. So we started doing this work, but haven't completed. Okay, are there any more questions, Kieran?
No, that's the end of the Mentimeter section. But again, if anyone has any questions, please use the chat function or email us, and I can hand over now to you, Sanna.
I have to
slideshow feed. And thank you guys for taking part in the Mentimeter. It's first time using it, so it was lots of fun on my end, if it was not so much on yours.
I need to find my slides first, pardon me. So
it's a good point from Carol, Sanna. She's saying we should consider learning from the NHS Digital in England. We have considered roles aligned to NHS KSF, so that's something that we could look at.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. So if you stop sharing your screen, Kieran, I can get my last slide up. So yeah, so the plan with this a talent pipeline advisory group is that we would try and get this together in a very short order. So we'd like to, so we have these suggestions for who should be party to it, and we'll be looking at it. But also, if you're interested in putting forward an expression of interest, so we don't know how many people is feasible to have in a group like this, but we welcome your expressions of interest by the 11th of December. And if you could get in touch with us through this email, research@dhiscotland.com, that would be very welcome. So what we aim to do is to have a membership ready before Christmas and set up a meeting date for early January to start thinking about how to start taking this work forward. And in an ideal world, we will aim to have a funding proposal ready by the end of this financial year with the blessing of our ISIN team. So yes, I think this is all from us. Do you have any questions at this stage? We still have time, so if you want to put questions in the chat and stay behind to talk, you're very welcome to do that. Otherwise, we'll thank you, and thank you for your participation and your attention.
Yeah, thanks everyone.